Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from the island of Maui in Hawaii, United States of America. I'm in a new location. You can see it, a beautiful Balinese, Japanese-style home gifted to me by two beloved friends, Tom and Michelle Sewell, here in the Haiku area of the island. I'll be here temporarily until I move into a new place, and then I'm looking for a home somewhere to sequester, to engage my aorta and my heart and my mind with you. I want to continue to live stream. I'm on the verge of orchestrating a digital run of my new show, Dead Man Walking, Freedom Never Dies, satirical comedy, poignant, tragic, beautiful. And today I would like to share, if I may, again, a spontaneous talk on world Dharma and demystifying spirituality. Just a serendipity of thought and feeling. Thank you for being in my life, my heart. World Dharma is a concept that came to me during the conflict in the former Yugoslavia, an ethnic cleansing, a genocide. And it was at that time, to be very succinct, that my Buddhism was obliterated or highlighted, re-enchanted, reformed. I had beliefs of my own depth, my own insight, my own wisdom, even at times a belief in my own enlightenment. I won't say they were dissolved, but they relaxed. And what emerged was the re-enchantment, if you will, of mystery, of the question, of deep self-inquiry, a higher regard for the classic states of consciousness to maintain independent thinking, to relax absolutes, certainties, and not necessarily to occupy or abide in a greater sense of mystery, but a deeper willingness to adventure without the certainty of my beliefs. I wanted to start all over, virginal, but not give everything up. World Dharma became a concept, the world, and the Sanskrit word dharma, to mean freedom. World freedom beyond orthodoxy. It was my attempt and my ongoing attempt to translate my own direct experience beyond spirituality, beyond orthodoxy, beyond tradition, beyond ism, and to really do all that I possibly can to couple my regard for politics and democracy with Dhamma, the Buddhist Pali equivalent of the Sanskrit word dharma, and how to elevate the status of universal human rights, ecological rights, and the deep regard for navigating the complexities of human consciousness. So world Dharma and the demystification of spirituality is my ongoing experiment with the experiential study of consciousness in context to body, to the six senses, and to contexts, both physical, nuministic, cosmological, quantum, without the woo. It's minimizing the quantum woo. Very embodied, if you will, very grounded, although I'm very taken in by the mystical and the dimensionality and deities and devas and all the various things that have come back to my heart through my Buddhism. Although they're there and I'm enchanted by them, I explore them, but my ground of being, demystification of Dhamma, demystification of spirituality, allow me just to serendipity across that terrain, if you will, and let's discover together the essence of our Dhamma, the essence of our world Dharma, the essence of our spirituality. Yes, hard to refute or negate awe, wonderment, and the power of the meditative state of mind that couples concentration with effort and sustained right attention or mindfulness over a period of time, and one begins to see that you can consciously engage the conditions, consciousness as a conditionality castle, consciously imbuing states of consciousness with right thought, right effort, right focus, right mindfulness, and the developmental radiance, if you will, of states of consciousness. When I think of spirituality, I think of the developmental, transformational, elevation, overcoming, developmental, transformational, elevating, overcoming physics of conflict and beauty. Dhamma, world Dharma. Embodied presence here and now through the six senses, being aware of context, inside and outside. Another way of looking at a Dhamma or world Dharma or the demystification of spirituality is the study of perception, the architecture, if you will, of identity, meaning and purpose. We're all in infinite relatedness all the time, and we are born into this body, into this context called human life in our particular city, home, in this galaxy, and how to make good on the promise of being human. What does it mean to make the vocation of consciousness embodied a vehicle for the awakening of the good, the true, and the beautiful? So spirituality could be seen here. Yes, we keep a wonderment, we keep an awe, we keep a heart open, if you will, to the great mystery that's so easily lost as we adultify our lives, overcoming our innocence and our childhood, where we look at the stars, we look at insects and birds and nature and swim and dream, and all of a sudden we feel that we're in this kind of miracle magic until the complexities of life and adulthood begin to often weigh us down and become more gravitationally allured by the conditioning of profit and fame and the rejection of pain. But world Dharma and the demystification of the spiritual life, to me, is the felt experiential navigation of purposeful existence, finding meaning in vicissitude and finding a tremendous joy in the artistry, if you will, in the aestheticism of improving and enhancing states of consciousness. Love is one thing, but when we fall in love, it becomes something even more. How easy it is to fall out of love. But to inject into massage, to meditate within, yogify a state of love, is to consciously spiritualize it, to create a world Dharma, intelligence within that quality of love that studies it, feels it, applies it, creates art with it, makes love through it. These types of behaviors to me are what I would call basic human spirituality. I'm thinking of the word which I've used quite frequently, known as Dhamma literacy. I was saying yesterday to a couple of friends during dinner about in Burma they have, initiated by my late Dhamma teacher, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita, a thing called the Dhamma culture courses that were really quite a desired event for the boys and girls of Burma, and perhaps they continue on, I pray they do, where boys and girls from the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, up to 18. I've met so many boys and girls who've done them for 10, 20 years. They learn basic cultural, Dhamma cultural, world Dharma. What are the A, B, C, D, E, F, G's of ordinary human spirituality? How well do you embody your dignity? How well do you move with present mindful awareness? So in other words, Dhamma culture, world Dharma, demystifying spirituality is about energetic, conscious, spiritual style. I don't go into woo and airy-fairy with my God, the quantum deities all around the universe, and all of which is fascinating, but very grounded, embodied dignity. Another way to look at spirituality for me is how active an individual is in her or his own conscience, the discernment of right and wrong, good and bad. How do I determine what to do, what not to do, and when to do it? Is it profitable? Is it weighed by a deep ethical discernment? So conscience and dignity, ethical concern. Okay, a 3-point, easy to remember demystification of spirituality. I think the ground of decency is generosity. I think the ground of safety and human elegance is in our ethics, in our principles. In Buddhism, this is called sila, the ability to understand the appropriateness of our speech. Demystifying spirituality is to embark upon the luminosity of thinking, speaking, and acting through the avenues of generosity, ethical intelligence, and a very rarefied form of spirituality, or of Dhamma or world Dharma, is the meditative or the yogic practices of, again I say this very, very calmly, the overcoming of greed, anger, and delusion. There's something so beautiful about meeting a woman or a man, a boy and a girl, a family, a community, dedicated to the vocation of being self-responsible. So demystifying spirituality would be, how well do you embody a self-reliant dignity rooted in conscience with radical discernment on the appropriateness of how well you take care of consciousness, the environment of our interiority, that invisibility known as the mind, psychology, emotions, the substratum. Those different intelligences could be called demystifying spirituality. The overcoming of greed, anger, and delusion, not even the overcoming, the challenging to it when it arises. I see you, I feel you, I know what you do, I know your function, I know your characteristics. If I attach to you, if I identify with you, I will be led according to the functionality of that state or those states of mind. If it's rooted in fear and anger, if I'm identified with those states of mind, I will be led by their innate characteristics. So one could call the demystification of spirituality the study of, how would I put it, reality versus abstractions. I vaguely remember reading the meaning of the word concepts in one of the dictionaries recently. That which is agreed upon by human beings, often separate from the reality of something. For example, an abstraction would be nation, gender, nationality, time. Obviously, oceans all blend into one another, but discerning on a linguistic, conventional level. We've got the Pacific, we've got the Caribbean, we've got the Indian, we've got the Atlantic, and so on and so forth. But in reality, when we are immersed in water, obviously the direct reality of immersion in water is a felt experience: warm, coolness, cold, heat. Dhamma or world Dharma, or the demystification of spirituality, is how well do we occupy present time experiential realities. How many people are bound by, addicted to interior belief systems, narratives, cognitive forms of interconnected circuitry, neural mappings that go deeper? But if one can mindfully inhabit a thought as a thought, a circuitry as a circuitry, beginning to understand process versus content. Yes, I'm angry. I know it as a thought of fear and anger. I notice it mindfully. Because I have discernment there and some degree of intelligence and a little bit of wisdom, I understand through reflection that when I act, think, and behave through fear and anger, it leads to this type of results for myself and another person. That level of demystification of the functions, the manifestations, the characteristics of SOM, states of mind. Obviously, as a human, but not necessarily so vividly do we know that we inhabit a body with six senses. World Dharma, the demystification of spirituality. How well do we discern and know perception when it arises? I see you, I hear you. And right there, at those six doors, if we're mindfully intelligent, we can discern both the reality of what's happening and imbue that reality with a type of Dhamma or spiritual aesthetic or style, just the way we dress or make love or talk or listen or dress or bathe or wash or shave. The same way we can inhabit the aesthetics of perception. The embodiment of a high degree of wise sensuality, that the dance between you and me is one of freedom. If I were to really embody the essence of what I'm trying to communicate today with regard to the demystification of spirituality, I would say it's an individual who's dedicated to all degrees of freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of the liberation of freedom. And so here we sit, and I ask myself, and I invite you to ask yourself, should you wish, where do you, how do you live in the expression? How well do you live in the expression of embodied spirituality, embodied world Dharma? What does that mean to you? To descend from the narratives of conditioned habit, challenging concept, to occupy the innovative innocence, if you will, the virginal innocence of present time nakedness, where you're seeing something for the first period of time. And there, as you would as an artisan or a midwife, giving birth to the artistry of new life within your own consciousness. So another way of looking at the demystification of spirituality is, how well do you rebirth formations, overcoming addictions and habits? The release of contraction into the radiance of openness. We love people to be near us, and we love being near people who elevate the status of curiosity, adventure, wonderment, playfulness, comedic, dark, satirical riffs that just dive down deep into the eroticism of God and heaven, and aren't afraid or mindfully relaxed fear. You can see the ways I'm describing consciousness in the play of energy between self and other. Pause. Demystifying spirituality is the artistry, the cognitive artistry of interrelated play. Keep it simple. How do we live is how well do we relate to self, to other than self, to the conditions of the sub-selves, things that are vaguely emerging within our own interior field, others, other dimensions, other regions, this, I want to use the word, this pyramid, if you will, of invisible conditions, and the study of those conditions in how they elevate the most beautiful, sustainable qualities, peace, unity, harmony, mutuality, respectful coexistence. I mean, the things that we struggle with as societies, as nations, as a species, the wars, the massacres, the tortures. My teachers would often say, Dhamma is the study of consciousness, the experiential study of interiority at the six senses with the five basic objects of feeling, of perception, of mental states, of physical realities, and the great invisibility known as consciousness. And right there we discern between the fabrications of projection and the relaxation of those formations into the reality of what actually is happening. How often do I love or paint through the eye, the ear, the nose, the body, and tongue, either through unrecognized conditioned habit, and how well do I liberate from those conditionings to be there in the playful newness, if you will, on the stage of my innocence, co-creating new musics, new forms. So another way to look at spirituality, I don't know whether you love art or poetry or literature or even just, the beauty of nature. How well do you inhabit your nature? Another way to demystify spirituality. How well do you get out of bed in the morning? As nuns and monks, we were often encouraged to make our day a sacred expression of Dharma art. That was my translation of how I was taught or encouraged to inhabit my body. Okay, pause. Embodied wisdom. If I were just to say, okay, young lady, young man, what is spirituality? What is world Dharma? I am born into a body. How well do I inhabit it? How well do I understand nutrient, diet, oxygen, perception, states of consciousness, psychological intelligence, emotional intelligence, and the intersection of what I would call Dhamma, world Dhamma intelligence. Demystifying spirituality is the study of intelligence. How well do we occupy the body, the home, the family, the nation, the planet, inseparable from the cosmos? Making good on the vocation, the highest order vocation of whatever you decide as the raison d'etre of your holiness, trans-religious rootedness. I don't disregard when I use the word demystifying spirituality, to release into the dream, the creative wonderment of possibility. How many people I've been near, including my mother and father and my aunts, and in those transitional days and weeks and hours and months, and in some cases just minutes before one transitions from movement and thought and feeling into what's known as the next life and the death of the life that we know. What a beautiful thing to see in the eyes of that person, in the heartbeat of that individual. Perhaps I'm projecting a type of mystical fearlessness that he who made me, she who conceived me, please take me home. So another intrinsic quality in demystifying spirituality and world Dharma is what I would call trust. Yes, it requires cultivation to learn to believe in your what? I want to use the word self. To believe in the attributes of your identity that you admire, that you're cultivating. They may not be perfect. They may be fraught with shadow and flaw. But you know that that root is different than the soil, connected as it is. And our dignity is rooted in that truth. Therein lies a sense of trust. It was yesterday that I said, I don't know who it was that I'm quoting, but it is a quote, that what we know is like a drop in the ocean to that which we do not know to be all the oceans. Think of that. Think of that in regard to demystifying spirituality or world Dharma, the pragmatism of basic being. What does it mean to cultivate the different levels of intelligences? Psychological intelligence. When do you create a cognitive barrier between you and dissonance? When do you know truly in your own mind and heart what is yours that comes from within and what is being said you should inhabit from without? Knowing how to discern there and how to be independent, creatively engaged in the edge between self and others. Psychological intelligence, psychological wisdom, emotional intelligence. How to adapt, qualities of resilience. All of us have navigated illness and struggle. And how well do you play along that line of high temperatures and abdominal pains? And I met a gentleman yesterday who has been dealing with cancer for nearly 3.5 decades, and he's challenged it through yoga and meditation, refinement of diet, breathing. It invigorated a refinement of presence to inhabit the natural aspects of being, trusting in a deeper intelligence. It took a catalyst of being diagnosed with a terminal illness to elevate the status of higher order purpose and engagement. Deliberate spirituality, I would say, instigates prior to crises the deeper rootedness of engaging the best of ourselves. So at the end of a day, the end of a month, I dare say the end of a lifetime, should we be conscious and able to reflect upon our lives, was it a life well lived? Did we fulfill the vision of our heart? How well do we think and feel, and we look across the terrain of our most intimate relationships, past lovers and husbands and wives, and perhaps you have children and even grandchildren, and even more great-great-grandchildren. Who knows the legacy of our lives? But most of all, when you reflect upon your own heart and mind and dignity and conscience and choices and the things that you didn't do, all the ways in which we're living at that eternal crossroads of choice, and we assess, self-assessment as an art form, and to help us navigate the terrain of consciousness embodied in form, all the while coming to terms with mortality everywhere we see and dream and look. How well did we live? Basic spirituality. If I were to sum up some of the key points today for me, I love people who are generous with their spirit, with their smile, with their hands, with their touch, with their belongings, with their allyships, with their friendships, with their books, with their music, with their art, with their heart. There's something about open-heartedness, about demystifying spirituality, and how we can just simply practice the art, the high open heart art of caring for other as equal to self. Wow, wow, wow. Just caring for others. Basic human decency and caring. And then to deliberately engage that caring with style and art and passion and patience and determination. How often I've seen in my memory of my brief time in war zones and in areas of extreme conflict, refugee camps and places where people have been displaced, where there is very little medicine and very little shelter, very little food, almost no safety. And in the absence of the comforts of day-to-day life, there are those among those people who come to find something so much more gem-like in their lives because they weren't necessarily occupied with the day-to-day. I don't want to deny the beauty of ordinary. But, in the area of conflict and crisis, their hearts naturally rose up in radiance. That's why deliberate renunciation and simplicity often highlight the more hidden beauties of the soul, the poetry of consciousness. How well do you wish to communicate? How many people I have met who live in looping circuitries of trying to unknowingly enlist you into their cult as a client. Want you to be enraptured with their being. And there's that level of unrecognized coercion or seduction. So I'm bringing these points up. Mindfulness. Heightened intelligence, sensitized awareness to feel and to know the reality of an SOM, state of mind. That's red. That's blue. That's white. That's brown. How did you get brown? How to mix states of consciousness creatively to create the right hue, the right tone, the right contrast, knowing how to infuse complexity within states of emotional presence and still be able to converse through those colors in shared space. So, demystifying spirituality. Something about between intelligence and intellectualism, between modesty and pretense, between delusion and wisdom, contraction and freedom. That zone of humanness. How well do you occupy your humanness? Something very beautiful about that. The qualities of humility, modesty, patience, the willingness to simply occupy an uncomfortable stillness could be a heightened state of spirituality. What is the word even spiritual? The absence of physicality, the priority of the invisibility versus the form? Can they be separated? So the word world Dharma, Dhamma, literacy, Dhamma, intelligence. I'll close here with a recapping of some of the more important points to me. When I first met my preceptor and earliest meditation teacher, the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, he talked to me about the nature of how to realize Dhamma. Two ways. The experiential study of consciousness within the body, mindfulness of self, mindfulness of thoughts, mindfulness of emotions, mindfulness of states of consciousness, mindful awareness of sound and color and odors and sensations in the body. The ability to ground oneself in basic objects of perception inside of one's own inner being. When you eat, how rare it was to not just eat a good curry or broccoli or drink peppermint tea, but how well did you taste the warmth, the texture of the food. The distinction between eating ideas and the reality of the felt experiential nature of taste, texture, sensation. Something so beautiful about an individual who can embody herself in the grace of basic human existence, basic spirituality. In that process, he then said that the next dimension is bringing what I just described of awakened mindful interiority to other. There's self-development and development of self in what he called world relationships. Two contexts. Self with self, figuratively speaking, and self with other. In meditation, spirituality, and Dhamma here is the study of consciousness and experiential interaction to elevate the good, the true, and the beautiful, and to overcome their opposites, often rooted in fear, greed, projection, blame, anger, worry, shame, delusion, ignorance. And that dimension, those two dimensions towards self and towards others. He went on to tell me, how well do you occupy the objects of the senses? How well can you refrain from objects of the senses that diminish, contract, denigrate you and other, if not seen or known or felt? Basic demystification of the Dhamma. How well can you engage the objects of the senses that lead to the betterment of self and other, that foster well-being, that create security and harmony, that relax fear? Basic demystification of Dhamma. And how do you know yourself to be who you are? He called it the three streams of experience. Thoughts, conscious content, the content of consciousness, thought and emotions. Speech, the Dhamma study of speech, intonation, timing, space, choice of words, intention. What words and sentences and paragraphs, what states of mind do they move through that influence the tone, the intention, and the outcome? And then the third stream of experience, embodied beings, generally speaking, you and me, live a life, and I use the word carefully, incessant movement. One of the things that you notice as a yogi, stating the obvious, a meditator, is that from morning until night, living in your meditative silence, we get out of bed. From that point on until the evening when we return to bed, incessant movement of our bodies and our minds. But the third avenue of action, the body. Embodied mindful presence. Oh, the beauty of being in a sacred space where you're supported and you know that your vocation is the inhabiting of the arm moving, the head turning, the eye seeing, the ears hearing, the posture upright, inhabiting the sensations of standing, sitting, walking, moving, reclining, reaching, bending, turning. How well do you live in the aesthetics and the sensational flow, both of physicality, of thought and emotions, with mindful intelligence? It's a type of ikebana, if you will. It's the sacred ceremony of life rather than a tea ceremony. The sacred ceremony of inhabiting life with feet on the ground and with heart wide open, being discerning and wise, and a mind willing to embrace the furthest reaches of our experience of infinite possibility, of wonderment, of awe, of infinity. Something I love about those who demystify spirituality and empower in that process radical adventure. They think and dream in ways that are so utterly unique that you go, wow, that is really radically creative. You look at the way in which they move, or they fix their home, their aesthetics, and you go, that is really amazing that they made 10 million decisions to create what we just ate in. That level of engagement. The 3 times, Mahasi said, there is that which is before the action, before the thought, and before the emotion. They call it in Buddhist psychology the cetana, the intention, the cognitive upsurge of motivation that begins to form the formation of the type of thought that we want to think in order to say it. That deeper well of intentionality. How often we neglect or negate the depth of motivation. Is it really motivated by the purity of my own dignity and integrity? And do we have an intelligence to understand that which precedes thought, speech, and action, the deep motivational well of our lives? It takes a very sensitive mindfulness to occupy that level of time before the so-called action. And then during the action of the thought, the emotionality, I know it to be what it is and what it isn't. I was fooled by it when I began to think it, and all of a sudden I found myself saying something that was really unkind. And I mindfully began to see through deep reflection that that thought was tinged with fear and anger and disregard for other and of self. Right there, Mahasi Sayadaw would say, when you see that, when you know that, mindfully disengage from something unprofitable, unwise, unkind. And of course, the third dimension of experience and time is that which is after the the so-called fact. Quiet time, or even in the midst of the conflict, and you're standing and you're sitting and you're feeling, you're crying, you're hoping, you're dreaming, and you reflect on your thought, your speech and action, what you said, what you did. And you reflect mindfully and realize that was not right. Right there, an act of conscience and dignity, the demystification of spirituality, is how well do you make good on the promise of forgiveness in action, in seeking something even more beautiful than forgiveness, reconciliation. My teacher came up with the concept in Burma before he passed away that Daw Aung San Suu Kyi embraced, along with the civilian leaders in Burma, who many of them right now are incarcerated. Others have been tragically tortured to death. Others are moving home to home. He called it the Dhamma, or the Dharma of reconciliation. High regard for harmony by acknowledging in one's own thought stream, one's own emotional stream, one's own action stream, a deep mindful reflection on the appropriateness, the skillfulness, and the unskillfulness, and to seek a more courageous relaxation of the habit of fear, greed, delusion, and overcome those states of mind as best as we can, reconcile in, and if you've harmed someone externally, seek reconciliation with the other, with the community, with the family. So these are some of the ways in which I would call the term world Dharma and the demystifying of spirituality. A final comment? Seda U Pandita introduced me to 3 words to embrace world Dhamma, to embrace the vocation of being a conscious human. To know something, he said, you must look at it. It takes self-honesty, patience, determination to look at things that aren't by first glance or first feel to be that comfortable to see or feel. But to know something, you must look at it. And to sustain that looking honestly. Sustained honesty, another way of looking at spirituality. The vocation of looking at reality rightly. Another way of looking at transparency and honesty. And when you look at it, you'll see it. And when you see it and look at it long enough, there's the dawning or the oxygenation of knowing. You know it to be true. You know it to be valuable. You know it to be profitable. You know it to be good. You know it to be beautiful. You know it to be freeing and liberating. Look, see, know, he said. Make that your Dhamma. Look, see, know it yourself. Look, see, know at your relationships. Abandon that which is unprofitable. Cultivate that which is beautiful. So from my heart to yours, today, World Dharma, demystifying spirituality. It may very well be that I continue this tomorrow. From my heart to yours, have a beautiful day, and thank you for being in my life.